Your photographer narrator, Fred Rackle. It's almost a month following the Kilauea eruption, and we have signs of activity about 30 miles further along the Kilauea Rift, which is laced with the underground plumbing from Kilauea. Much of the sparsely populated Puna area had been suffering earthquakes and tremors all through early January. It's here in sleepy Kapoho town that our volcano drama unfolds. Throughout this area, much ground cracking had resulted from the earth tremors, and which were being recorded and plotted at the Volcano Observatory further up the slope. Here, almost in the center of town, is a large ground crack running right along Main Street. Yours truly inspects this for signs of heat or steam, but no evidence. A volcanic eruption had been expected somewhere in Puna, but of course no one could have pinpointed exactly where it would start. Well, on the evening of January 13th, it did start only 300 yards to the rear of Kapoho town. A 1 mile long rift had split the valley floor and was pumping molten lava 50 to 100 feet into the night sky. Along almost the entire length of the rift line. We're a full mile southeast now along the rift and finding this low but forceful lava flow rolling along the valley floor, heading for the sea some 5 miles distant. This is a pahoehoe flow, indicated such by its speed, and carries along with it the partially cooled, broken-off slag. The flow is moving about 2 miles per hour, more or less, depending on the slope of terrain. Back at the rift line, we see increased height as the lava is now blasting to about 200 feet in this one section. Occasionally there are more explosive bursts that are going off like bombs, very spectacular to observe closely up. Up she goes. Wow, how about that? The steady fountaining is lowering a little at the left end of the rift, and it appears that the force is gaining on the right. Where most of the bursts are higher and the cone is growing larger with many blobs splashing down, will become the center of the volcano over the next few days. Back at the flow heading, we see lava pouring into a gully area on its route along the valley floor. At this point, the flow is about a half mile in width and passing over farmland and toward orchid fields and the Warm Springs vacation area some 2 miles further. This is a hardy ohia brush burning, though much of the flame is from the methane gas emission from buried vegetation. This is quite a large gully, and so will take a large volume away from the flow, filling deeper and deeper. More of the methane flames now leaping from the ground in advance of the rolling lava, fired by the high heat and coming now directly toward us, but fairly safe to photograph as the forward speed is not that great. Just so we don't trip over ourselves moving back. Oops. Now we're warned by shouts that the flames are jumping behind us, so we have to grab our equipment and move fast. Oh boy. And establish another position. Early the next morning, we have much pleasure to discover a new phenomenon. The right side of the rift line is belching forth with tremendous volume of jetting steam. The lava underground had tapped into a water source below Warm Springs, boiling the water to cause this steam eruption. A most spectacular sight. Seen from the coffee fields here, at the sides of the rift line, the steam is rising explosively thousands of feet into the sky, and some of this matter will be carried by the upper winds clear over to Oahu, even to Kauai, and where the people simply term it volcano weather. Most spectacular, what tremendous force. We're photographing a true rarity of volcanic activity. Take a walk up on the hill now, just above town, where we get a better view, showing the farm fields in the foreground, panning slowly to the left, noting that the fountaining had stopped at that side, with all the force now being at the right side, where all that blasting steam had been rising. The center of the growing cone, which shows a pretty golden color in the morning light, here about 300 feet, and we look by telephoto lens right into the center of that fast-rising mass. Up and up she goes, a blinding scene. If you hadn't seen this proceeding, you'd hardly recognize this as lava, would you? From the air now, we can become better oriented. The town in the lower foreground, the beautiful productive farm valley to the rear, with the many truck farms, the row of the town stores to the lower left, and the growing volcano threatening the existence of it all. Back on the ground, from the hill just above the stores, we see this more clearly. Only 300 yards away through papaya fields, orchid farms, yours truly up on the flow siding, shooting at the fountain lava and the cinder cone. It's hard enough up there, don't worry. We're taking close-ups once again, right into the raining lava. We call this scorching close-ups. Then backing off of the flow. Move carefully up here so you don't trip and get in trouble. We find some curious tourists here who had somehow got past the civil defense people, keeping the public out of the area. They're poking at the flow heading with sticks. One of them here gets a hot foot. How about that? They're leaving through a papaya grove there that's soon going to be destroyed. At night, we're seeing quite a change in size and a giant new lava flow glowing and fanning out over the older flow, not clearly seen here from the air. From the ground later, much higher yet, and we estimate 1,200 feet. This being a new threat because it could seek new direction from the older flow. We're seeing the new giant here from the other side of the valley, silhouetted by a row of pretty cocoa palms, which are yet quite far from the heat. But they'll be doomed as the new heavier flow approaches. Makes a beautiful picture, doesn't it? Orchid plants are being evacuated by the thousands from the fields of the Hongo Orchid Farm as the lava flow approaches. Most of the crop is saved. Not so is Mr. Hongo's house, as it becomes one of the first farm home victims of this eruption. This is a flank movement of the flow and not very fast, but the advance can't be stopped, and so the home burns. Bulldozers are called to work, pushing together earthen dikes in attempt to divert the coming lava flow and save the warm springs resort land from destruction. Interestingly, though, this type action can cause legal arguments, for just maybe the lava is diverted to someone else's land, huh? This is the same flank movement as destroyed the Hongo land, and again not moving very fast, but it does push on into the area. It does overrun the dikes and on into the springs. Next morning, we're at the road junction looking at the Visitors Bureau marker that had directed many visitors to that recreation and vacation playland. Too bad. From the air again, and looking at the very wide scope of this Kapoho lava flow, the town lies just on the far side of the scene and is just high enough and upwind enough that the town had not yet been destroyed, except for the cinder fallout. Lava enters the sea along a wide front, boiling the ocean water, killing fish in the reef areas. This is how the islands have grown geologically, creating new land that is new shoreline, and will be added to the future maps. Here's another photographer, my good friend Gordon, with whom I've worked together at other volcanic eruptions. Now we look closer back up on the hill above town. We see an increasingly dismal sight. Though the town itself has not yet been covered by lava flows, it has been hit hard with cinder, thrown high by